Welcome to Le Weekend, your essential roundup of French news on culture, business, the economy, and current affairs. We bring you a convenient way to catch up on the stories from the past week in France, plus an additional focus feature blending reportage and cultural context. The headlines on Monday, February 23rd. The U.S. ambassador to France promised not to interfere in French affairs. Charles Kushner failed to turn up after he was summoned to the French Foreign Ministry on Monday. In response, France blocked the ambassador from having access to French government ministers until he explained himself, as reported by Le Monde. The president of the Louvre Museum resigned. French President Emmanuel Macron accepted Laurence Descartes' resignation and praised it as an act of responsibility. Descartes had faced widespread criticism after the October break-in at the Paris Museum, as reported by Le Monde. Activists placed Prince Andrew's photo in the Louvre Museum to protest Epstein-related misconduct. A framed photograph of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, the younger brother of Britain's King Charles, was placed in Paris's Louvre Museum on Sunday. The photo showed the former Prince Andrew shortly after his arrest last week on suspicion of misconduct in public office related to his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, as reported by RFI. The growing wolf population pushes France to rethink livestock protection laws. France is set to ease restrictions on shooting wolves that attack livestock in a move the government says reflects the growing spread of the predators and amid mounting pressure from farmers, as reported by RFI. The headlines on Tuesday, February 24th. A slight chill hit the French economy in February. According to statistics agency ANSEE, based on its economic surveys conducted in industry, services, commerce, and construction, the composite indicator measuring it fell by 2 points to 97, moving further away from its long-term average of 100. Dorian Ruchet, head of the economic forecasting department, said that companies are not as optimistic as anticipated, which creates a small negative risk to growth forecast from the start of the year, as reported by Les Echos. Electricity transmission network operator RTE said that conditions are right to accelerate the electrification of France. With competitive prices and abundant low-carbon electricity, RTE believes that all the indicators are finally positive for the country to succeed in its energy strategy. The increase in electricity consumption must correspond to a recovery in industrial activity and a decrease in demand for gas and oil, as reported by Le Figaro. Historical high temperatures for February were recorded in southwestern France. The mercury climbed to 28.3 degrees centigrade, approximately 83 degrees Fahrenheit, in Orthez, in the Pyrénées-Atlantiques department, breaking previous highs recorded for this time of year. The rise in temperatures caused by greenhouse gas emissions from human activities is faster in France than the global average, according to Météo France, as reported by Le Parisien. The headlines on Wednesday, February 25th. France's struggling winemakers are to get 40 million euros in aid. The blog's farming chief, Christophe Hansen, announced the measure in an interview with Agence France Presse, in which he defended the European Commission's work in support of farmers, as reported by Le Monde. In related news, in the Bordeaux region, the crisis is hitting wine growers hard. The region accounts for 46% of the sector's bankruptcies last year. Amid declining consumption, overproduction, and massive vine uprooting, the industry is forced to reinvent itself to survive. Between distilling surpluses, the success of sparkling wines, and the development of alcohol-free wines, producers are searching for new markets, as reported by France 24. Tefal maker Seb plans to cut up to 2,100 jobs worldwide. The French consumer appliances group said on Wednesday it was targeting 2,100 jobs globally, including 500 voluntary departures in France as part of a major restructuring, as reported by Reuters. Perennial pollutants have contaminated thousands of hectares of farmland. Sewage sludge contaminated with PFAS is being spread as fertilizer on several thousand hectares of farmland in France, according to an investigation published on Thursday by the media outlets Disclose and France 3, as reported by Le Figaro. These are the headlines on Thursday, February 26th. Marine Le Pen said she will not run for French president if she has to wear an electronic bracelet. On July 7th, the far-right leader will learn the appeal court's decision in the parliamentary assistance case, for which she was sentenced for 2 years of electronic tagging and 5 years of ineligibility with immediate effect, as reported by Le Monde. A traditional baguette has been voted the best in Paris. The Fournil Didot bakery, located in the 14th arrondissement, wins the 2026 edition of the competition, which elects the best traditional baguette in the capital each year, as reported by Le Parisien. The headlines on Friday, February 27th. Sweden confirmed that a drone jammed near French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle was indeed Russian. France slammed the spy attempt as a ridiculous provocation, while Russia called the allegation absurd, as reported by Le Monde. President Macron said the EU's move to provisionally apply the Mercosur trade deal a bad surprise for France. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen earlier said that the European Union will implement the trade deal with the South American bloc while waiting for a top court's ruling on its legality. France has strongly opposed the trade agreement, as reported by Le Monde. France named a new culture minister as incumbent Rachida Dati turns her attention to the race for mayor of Paris. The presidency on Thursday announced that Catherine Pégard, a former magazine editor and former head of the Palace of Versailles, will take over the coveted culture portfolio from Dati. The reshuffle has already been overshadowed by a heated row in the Paris mayoral race in which Dati is running, as reported by RFI. Jim Carrey received an honorary César Award, the equivalent to the Oscars. Hollywood star Jim Carrey spoke about his French origins and joked about his language skills during an emotional speech after receiving the honorary César from the French Film Academy at the awards ceremony on Thursday in Paris. A French court upheld the far-left label for Mélenchon's LFI party. The Council of State rejected the appeal filed by Jean-Luc Mélenchon's La France Insoumise against the Interior Ministry's decision to remove its candidates from the left bloc for the upcoming municipal elections, as reported by Le Monde. The personal data of 15 million patients was hacked in France. The administrative data such as the name, surname, telephone number and/or postal address of some 15 million French citizens was the subject of a massive data leak, according to the Ministry of Health. This cyber attack dates back to late 2025. An investigation has been opened, according to the Paris Prosecutor's Office, as reported by France 24. You are listening to Le Weekend. And now that you're all caught up with the headlines from the past week, it's time for our focus story. Today we look at why a queen made the news this week. Something happened on the Côte d'Azur this February that hadn't happened in more than 700 years of history. Nearly 400,000 people poured into the streets of Nice for its annual carnival, a record-shattering number that overwhelmed Place Masséna, flooded the Promenade des Anglais, and turned a medieval tradition into something feeling very much like a 21st century phenomenon that the mayor of Nice, Christian Estrosi, called a magical edition. This year, for the first time in modern history, the Nice Carnival is being governed not by a king, but by a queen. The theme of the 2026 edition, running from February 11th to March 1st, was Vive la Reine, Long Live the Queen. Heroines of history and fiction, warriors, scientists, artists, political leaders have taken over the floats, the giant papier-mâché heads reaching up to 20 meters into the sky for the largest floats, and the flower-decked procession of the famous Bataille des Fleurs. At the closing ceremony, when the carnival effigy is traditionally burned in a bonfire on the beach while fireworks light up the Bay of Angels, it should be a queen that goes up in flames, but the city said the king consort will be burned instead, as we do not burn women at the stake. It is a symbolic revolution dressed in confetti. The proclamation echoing through the streets says it plainly. The king is dead, long live the queen. After decades, centuries almost, of male carnival monarchs presiding over the revelers, the city made a choice that is cultural, political, and deeply theatrical. After all, this is what the carnival has always been about. But what is this carnival, and how long has France been at the heart of it? The word carnival itself traces back to medieval Latin, meaning to remove meat, a reference to the approaching fast that starts in Lent, when the church required the faithful to abstain from rich food for 40 days. Before that deprivation set in, communities across Catholic Europe held one last spectacular blowout. They ate whatever they had, they drank what remained, they wore masks and turned the social order upside down. Servants could mock their masters, the poor dressed as the rich, the powerful were lampooned in public with impunity. As the medieval church eventually came to accept, it was impossible to ban these festivities, so instead it absorbed them into the liturgical calendar, placing them just before Lent as a kind of sanctioned release valve. And so Carnival became a festival of inversion, a time when what was normally forbidden was briefly permitted and hierarchies were upside down. When the world turned, however briefly, the scholars describe it as a social institution that temporarily degrades or uncrowns the higher functions. In other words, you break the rules so you can better observe them for the rest of the year. In Nice, the tradition can be traced back to 1294, when Charles of Anjou, Count of Provence, wrote that he had passed the joyous days of Carnival in the city. It may, as the Carnival's own page notes, make Nice the location of the oldest Carnival celebration on record. At the time, festivities were organized by the so-called Abbés of Fools, who arranged balls across 4 social classes: nobles, merchants, artisans, and workers, each dancing separately, but all wearing masks that let them briefly shed their station. The modern carnival, as we know it, with its monumental floats and satirical characters and spectacular parades, really began in 1873 when a Niçois entrepreneur named Andrea Seton founded the first festival committee. His goal was partly civic boosting. Nice was trying to attract wealthier winter visitors and needed spectacle, and partly genuine cultural pride. He recruited artist Alexis Mossa and later his son, who together created the visual language of the modern Nice Carnival, a mix of allegorical mythology, satire, and current events, which is now recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. The flower battle was introduced in 1876, initially as a simple exchange of blossoms between spectators and performers, but then evolved into the elegant procession that it is today, with artists on floats decorated entirely by hand throw over 100,000 flowers into the crowd. The carnival hasn't ran continuously, as it was cancelled for both World Wars and again in 1991 during the Gulf War. This 253rd tradition transforms the carnival into a platform of empowerment and inspiration for future generations. The carnival has always been about inverting the established order, even temporarily, and therefore crowning a queen and burning her effigy at the end carries a weight that goes well in line with the spectacle. Nice is far from the only carnival in France. The country has a rich and strikingly diverse carnival tradition, each regional event shaped by its own geography, economy, and culture. Take Dunkirk, for example, in the far north of France, near the Belgian border. It is, by general agreement, the maddest carnival in the country, a deliberately anti-spectacle, anti-tourist event that sprawls across 3 months from January to April, and is not built around floats but around the community energy of a fishing port. Its origins lie in the early 17th century, when local ship owners would throw a grand feast called the Foy for the fishermen and their families before the men would depart for 6 months to fish the waters of Iceland. Many of these fishermen did not come back. The feast was a farewell that could easily be a final one, and it had the strength and tenderness of that knowledge baked into it. The tradition that grew from it, the Vischerbende, meaning fisherman's band in Flemish, eventually merged with Catholic carnival traditions and became the event it is today, where tens of thousands of revelers dress in elaborate costumes, parade through the streets with orchestras dressed as fishermen, and gather in front of the town hall as the mayor shares hundreds of kilograms of smoked herrings from the balcony with the crowd, and enormous 8-meter wicker giants, the tradition dates back to the 1800s, tower over the procession. Then there is Limoux, a small town in the Languedoc, roughly an hour from Carcassonne, which makes the extraordinary claim of hosting the longest carnival in the world. It runs every weekend from January through to the end of March or early April, roughly 3 months of continuous festivities, and it unfolds almost entirely within the medieval Place de la République. This gives it an intimate, almost compressed feel. Its origins reach back to a tradition among local millers who, according to records from the 14th century, paid their annual dues to the nearby Dominican priory on Shrove Tuesday and celebrated their freedom from that debt by walking through the streets, scattering sugared almonds and flour, accompanied by musicians. This carnival was officially established in 1604, and what takes place now retains a quality that is almost ritualistic. Groups of about 20 Pierrots in white masks and satin costumes, each group representing a different neighborhood or trade, dance a slow, hypnotic step, perform 3 parades daily, and conduct their performances in Occitan, the ancient language of the region. The closing night, known as Nuit de la Blanquette, is named for Blanquette de Limoux, a sparkling wine produced in the region since the 16th century and considered by many to be the oldest sparkling wine in the world, a claim Champagne would prefer you didn't dwell on. At the end of it all, the effigy of the Carnival King is tried in Occitan, found guilty and burned. What is special about all these carnivals and what makes the tradition so rich is how completely different they are from each other. In Nice, there's the Mediterranean grandeur and beauty. In Dunkirk, there's the working class maritime tradition, and Limoux is intimate Occitan language and wine-saturated expression of the town's own peculiarity. They all emerge from the same structure, the feast before the fast, the permitted excess before the required abstinence. But they have evolved into something that goes far beyond religion, into a deep place of marking time together. The king burns, so something new can begin. And this year, after 7 centuries of male carnival monarchs, the queen takes the stage. Thank you for listening to Le Weekend, your one-stop destination for the main headlines in France. Catch our weekly roundup every weekend wherever you get your podcasts. Stay informed.